Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Today we have a special guest, Marcus John Abraham. He's a special friend of mine. I've known him for many years. He's been on some of the courses I've run in the past, and it's a privilege to have him on today's show. He's going to talk about his holistic life coaching and his own journey, which evolved through learning many modalities. I'm sure he'll tell you more about them himself. Marcus, great to have you on the show today. Nice to have you on board.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, it's great to be here and to have this conversation. Definitely, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the viewers watching will probably be wondering your journey into holistic life coaching, and you do many different things. And how did you get into what you do? What sort of was your motivation? How did you sort of get into what you're doing now?
For me, it kind of goes back to when I was kind of a young teenager, and when you kind of it can happen for anyone at any point in life where you kind of get sick and tired of being sick and tired of a certain way of life. And for me, I wanted to change, and I wanted to create a healthier mind, because I used to take substances as a teenager, recreational, and my mind weren't too good after years of doing that. So I wanted to become calmer, more confident, and just change my life. So that was kind of what motivated me. And then through reading different books, coming on the courses, it's kind of evolved into kind of a journey of learning and then practicing what I've learned to be able to change my own life, and now offering that to other people. And I kind of the crux of it probably started more in depth when I started learning the NLP after I read an NLP book, and then I came on your courses. That's when things really started to change in a the more fundamental way to where I am now.
That's really interesting stuff. And you mentioned there that as a youngster you sort of turned to substances and so on and so forth, and that in itself can be very challenging. I think that it's like a spiral in that situation, where to break out of that sort of situation you're in. And when you sort of were trying to break out of that situation you're in, was it difficult, Marcus, to sort of leave it all behind? And I mean, there's sort of there's ongoing literature and debate about substances and addiction and so on and so forth, and I shan't go into too much detail, but certainly when I wrote certain dissertations, I sort of do research, and one person thinks one thing, one the other. But regardless of what sort of school of thought you're coming from, was it difficult to sort of break out of that and get out of the situation you're in?
Yeah, it was quite a struggle, and it was a process, because I would change like a behavior or habit, but then I would still have the same friends and the same people around me. So I was constantly like around the different habits that I wanted to stop, and I would fall back into it, whether it be smoking or cannabis or other kind of recreational party substances that I would take at weekends. So even though I'd stop the stuff, I'd still be around the same people. So it weren't long before you'd get caught in again. So I got to a point where I had to kind of cut kind of everyone off and kind of recreate my life again, and decide, who do I really want to be? Do I want to be this person who's doing these different things that are not working, or do I want to be someone else? And yeah, it was difficult, but I kind of, for me, it was just, what am I doing in this moment? I just kept focusing on like the moment, or this week or this day. And as time progressed, with 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, I was different. I won't say a totally different person, but I was changing and moving forward. And as time gone on, I've become totally different. And when I look back at that, I don't recognize the person I was anymore, because it's so strange when you change, you go in a different direction. Just a few small changes, 3-4 years down the line, you'd be like, whoa, what's happened there?
That's a really good point. Really, really good point you made there. I think that some people, they look for the huge change, and I think that we can change. But I think for me, so there's little small victories. I think for me, it's extending the comfort zone, where rather than sink or swim, just gradual change, incremental changes are more sustainable. I think sometimes people look for the big overnight change, and I think for me, the nervous system can't really process that dramatic change. I think incrementally. But some people then give up as well. They kind of think, well, I'm not where I want to be, and they just go back to where they were before. And I think it's a really great point you made there, where even those the smaller subtle change can make a big difference. And then one becomes 2, 3, 5, and like you said, before you know it, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, look back and think, wow, I can't believe I was in that situation, because a lot of people do get stuck and they struggle to break out almost throughout a lifetime. And I think, like you mentioned before, it's an ongoing journey of learning, and that's the sort of big thing. And in your own journey, you kind of, I know you sort of obviously like an old Pete in the therapy, and it was a pleasure working with you, and I always thought you'd do really, really well. And I'm sure you'll continue to do really, really well. But equally, like, on your own journey, you sort of, you Reiki, and being at your premises in the past and done Reiki with you, I'm a big fan of Reiki. I recommend it. It's helped me a lot, helps me a lot to this day with my aches and pains and so on and so forth. But so you went to Reiki, and what other things did you sort of put in your toolbox that made a big difference for you?
Well, the journey actually started off with Reiki, and it was through having a treatment of someone. Something opened up within me, and for a few months I was in this kind of I don't know if you would call it connected to source, or kind of a more aware state of being for quite a few months, and the energetics of it were quite powerful. But I was very young. I was only 18, so I didn't know what was going on. It was just in my mind at the time. It was like, I'd found God, or I'd found my soul or something, and it was really, really powerful. And then after it settled down a bit, I thought, right, there was something in that, even though it was a bit crazy. I thought there was something in that, and I went back for more treatments, and the practitioner said, you need to learn this for yourself if you really want to change your life. So that's when I started getting into Reiki and practicing it every single day. And I went from like level 1, 2, 3, and since then, I've had about 5 different Reiki teachers up to 2007, and I found a really good teacher to help me do the kind of inner work that you need to do with it as well. Because I've found that there's different ways of working with these techniques, where you've got the kind of camp that one right now, just to have some kind of experience, or to try and right now, or the kind of the learning personal development, use these skills, and you will have changes, and things can happen quickly, but then it's kind of a process of learning and kind of developing into who we want to become. That's what Reiki does for me. If it weren't for using it, I don't think I would have been in it.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. And I think for me, it's like many, many years ago, I went and did a Reiki session myself, and I was having some back trouble. I was very young at the time, in my early 20s. I was getting a sore back doing sports, and I went to do some Reiki, and it was the first time really I'd seen anything like it. I mean, I laid down there and thought, what's going on here? People got their hand above me somewhere. So I was quite skeptical, if I'm completely honest. At first, I thought, how in the world is this going to work? And me having sort of like, sports performance conditioning background, the scientific sort of, albeit I was, at the time, I did a lot of NLP and I started hypnotherapy. And so I did have an open mind. That's what took me to it. But I thought that was one bridge too far, someone offering. But equally at the end of it, I don't know what happened, but I felt, and I'm not advising people who've got back pain, any pain, obviously go see a medical person first. But for me, I felt a big change. I felt like an energetic shift, and it was really amazing, really, how I felt, if nothing else, I felt more centered. I felt more on course again. I just felt, and through the last few years in my own development, I've been doing a lot of reading and research and so on and so forth. And I had this moment the other week where I was doing a seminar to about 150 neurophysiotherapists. It was based at Leeds University for the ACIPF. And I was sort of doing a seminar, and I've been reading a lot on I'm not sure if you come across the polyvagal theory. But anyway, and cutting a long story short, I've been reading a lot about that, and I brought it into the seminar. Not that I'm an expert on it, but I know enough to sort of share some valuable information. I thought I'm going to share it to complement what I do, what I'm expert in. So, and I thought this is really interesting, because in my own journey, I started reflecting on making experiences for people to change their states. And if you can change their state, they become more adaptive behaviorally. But through introspection, I thought, well, if you sort of think 4,000 years ago, chakras and all these sort of, mindfulness and so on and so forth, it's almost like, well, as much as we like to think science has got there, now this stuff's been going on, but just in terminology for thousands of years. And it's almost like science now is discovering stuff that 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, deep meditation, yoga, Reiki, how powerful these things are. And here I was speaking to a neurophysiotherapist, who obviously very scientific, and started talking about chakras. And I was comfortable talking about it because I thought, you know what, I can link this to science. Very, very difficult to do that, but I thought I can link it. And the message for me, Marcus, wasn't about the chakras, it was about being purely holistic. Now, coming from a place of true holism, not reductionist, not saying, well, it's one size fits all, turn over every stone. And the message was how important deep meditation is, how important yoga is, how important to find what works for you and just sort of take it and run and go from there. But your thoughts on Reiki, did you ever have that? Ever have people come in to do a Reiki session and you sort of, if they don't know a great deal about it, kind of think, well, what's this all about? Did you ever had that before?
Yeah, I've definitely had people come who've and met people in random places where I've done Reiki on people. When I used to work in security work, and I'd be at a festival, and someone would be like feeling a bit anxious or stressed, and I'd give them some Reiki, sat down on a chair like hey, and they'd be like, I don't know what you're talking to me, but I feel a bit better. And I wouldn't explain it too much, because once you start getting into the theory of it, it can lose people. And I've had skeptical people who were really skeptical. They don't believe in it. They'll have a treatment, and something will happen. I can even see it on the face that something shifted or something's changed within them. And then when the mini treatment, for example, is finished, and they kind of say like back in their own presence, and then the mind comes back on, and then start to doubt it. Because they're so unsure that they've had an experience, but then it's like, oh, I don't know what that was, and they don't understand it. So then they just go back into skeptical mode. So it's and I do like you said, if we can be open to it, we're more likely to connect with it and have an experience. Sometimes people can be really resistant and they won't allow it in. It's unfortunate for people who are too skeptical and won't even just be open at least a little bit. But it's
I mean, each to their own. I think everyone's on their own journey, and sometimes people have the journey, and we're all, I wouldn't say evolve, I'd say we all are on our own journey, and different things make sense at different times in people's lives. And I think ultimately in the end, I think fascinating there. You mentioned working security in the door, where rather than pick someone up and throw them out, sit down and we'll Reiki you instead. That'd be you could do a course for people in security. I suppose people in security could probably do a bit of Reiki themselves. I can imagine it can be pretty stressful working in security and on doors. People obviously have a bit to drink, and they're probably not the person they are when they're sober. So you can they're expecting to be thrown out, and then here you go, just sit down in some Reiki, just de-escalate. That's fascinating.
I'd need to give it more to the actual doorman and security rather than the people to deal with. In the 10 years that I was doing security work, I never had to hurt. In security work, sometimes doormen can be a bit aggressive, and I never had to get really aggressive with anyone or hurt anybody in any way. And just through having that kind of Reiki energy within me, and using it consciously when I have been working, it really does help in your interaction with people, especially in conflict situations. If you're in a more kind of aware state rather than reacting to what someone's doing, you can impact the situation in a much conscious way, where you're not coming from a reactive and an angry place because someone's doing something they shouldn't be doing. It was really powerful using and having that Reiki energy while I was working on the doors for those years. It was really powerful.
No, that's interesting stuff. That's really important, I think, to be able to sort of like, have that element of control and push things to the neocortex, the executive functioning part of the brain, where we're more logical and rational and more self-aware. I mean, people fire things into our limbic system. It's quite easy to sort of like, spark off, and we all spark off. We're only human, and I think for me, sort of buying that time, that 6-10 seconds before the gap between impulse and action for me is important. So you could be at a bar and someone sort of throws a drink at you, and you think, okay, the first thing that you impulsively want to do is to sort of like, grab or throw something back over that person. You think actually consequentially it's not a good idea. And I think from a point of view, that's one gift that we've been given as human beings, where if that happens in the animal kingdom, if say if a lion attacks another lion, then it's going to react straight away. If a monkey bites another monkey, it's going to sort of go at it straight away. If a cat versus one cat's going to sort of react. As a human beings, we've got that ability to just to decompress and think logically, consequentially. Because at the end of the day, if someone sort of drop a drink over you or push you and that sort of stuff, the reality is that, okay, it's not nice, and I'm not saying to be a doormat, but equally you think, well, is my reaction in proportion to the event itself? And that's what I think to myself. Someone cuts you up on the road. There's been times people cut me up on the road, and I wind the window down and sort of give it what was. Do you think afterwards, well, what's it done anyway? I mean, the reality is it's not going to solve any issue. And then you create that energy. It's like a spiral. It's almost like your day kind of, you start attracting it in your life, and it's quite fascinating. That's probably another story for another day. But I think for me, I think definitely having that self-awareness is key. Funny you should say, and I met someone about a week and a half ago. I was at a seminar. I'm going to interview her again tomorrow, and she's an amazing woman, Sandy Edwards. I'm going to interview again tomorrow, and she did some she was involved in the research at a hospital in the UK. We're going to go into more detail tomorrow. They did some scientific research at a university based on a hospital in the UK on healing and statistical data. I mean, I was sat there in this seminar. I only went by chance, because if you believe things happen by chance, but I was in London anyway, and a colleague of mine said, come along to this seminar. She's going to talk about her findings at a hospital in the UK. She's doing like healing treatments. And Sandy Edwards, if you get a chance to Google and be friends with her, she's on social media. I'm going to interview again tomorrow. And it was fascinating because I sat there and I was sort of blown away at the statistical data that she presented. Now, she's not into science, but the researchers obviously were. And I'm sort of in one camp science, in one camp spiritualism, and sort of a spectrum in between. But I'm sat there thinking, wow, when I learned statistics at uni, it was for a purpose, because here I am, and I could really understood the data, albeit no data is 100% reliable, and so on and so forth. But equally in saying that, the stats were so impressive, and I sat there thinking, wow, I've got to interview this woman. It's got to get out there, because I truly believe in my heart of hearts. This is my opinion, not her opinion. I think that without being contentious, I really do believe that. The money they got given to do the research, it wasn't a great deal in the big scheme of things. But if you're a pharmaceutical company and do research, then you can reinvest in more research. But obviously they got a lot through grant, and it's hard to sort of reinvest. Research is a loss. And I truly believe, and this is not, having got anybody, I truly believe, had that been a big company who got those results, then it would have got a lot more traction in the media. And that's the way I see it. And I think for me, there should be a level of maturity in the media too, because I think at first it was almost like shaming tactics about, there's some silly articles coming out about what they were doing, and you can't argue against the stats. I mean, they were phenomenal, and more things like that are key. I'm a big believer in science, don't get me wrong, but I believe science has more questions than answers. And I believe science, we're at the edge of a pier. If you sort of go to a pier, Blackpool Pier, a pier in Wales somewhere, we've come so far with technology, but there's an ocean we don't understand. And I think that there's so much we don't understand. I think for me, the only way we're going to move forward if we have collaborations with great minds, and we get together and sort of, because really we've got to put the people first. For me, it's about putting people first and finding ways to help people get better in every way we possibly can. What works for one person might not work for somebody else. what works for somebody else might not work for another person. And with yourself, Marcus, what are some of the people? I know there's going to be a broad range of people who come to see you, but can you give us an idea of the sort of people who come to see you for sessions and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so kind of people. So it depends on what people are looking for, really. Some people might just come because they want to relax and chill and just, you know, let a bit of stress off. So they might come just for like a full body Reiki treatment, and you know, I'll perform that, and they'll feel a bit of pressure off. They'll be relaxed and they'll de-stress, you know, for a few days. And then some people who have more kind of deeper issues and they want to, you know, do some kind of personal development. So then I offer them kind of a holistic coaching where I'll use Reiki as kind of a foundational process, and then I bring in hypnosis, NLP, and EFT just to work with the different patterns within the mind. And depending on what the issue is, I can help on an unconscious level, and then I teach them little tools they can use. So it might be like, you know, an anchoring technique, or it might be EFT to, you know, release anxiety, stress, or kind of low mood feelings. And when they practice those techniques between the weeks, I see them, you know, within 3 or 4 short sessions, they're kind of flying from where they was, you know, towards where they want to be, just helping them change them old patterns and create new ones. So the kind of, yeah, people with anxiety, depression, do get some people who come with addictions as well, but then underneath that, they've usually got anxiety and depression and other kind of relationship problems. So people don't come, you know, they kind of come in with an issue on the surface, but they're kind of underneath, they're kind of a bag of tricks with all sorts. So you find yourself, you know, whatever I've marketed, people come in with a specific issue, but there's a lot of other stuff underneath that you end up working with to, you know, to move them in the right direction for them.
That's really interesting stuff. I think that's really good that you do that. And I think that, you know, certainly for me, I have times throughout the day where I'll sort of meditate for half an hour. And it's quite interesting because I mentioned in a seminar recently that if, say, 60 years ago you told people that you're going out for a run, people would say, who's chasing you? They'd be like, you know, what's going on there? Where this day and age, sometimes Mark is going to tell people I'm going to meditate for half an hour or do a little bit of yoga or go for a walk. And I went on a trip recently with some friends, and I felt I almost had to sort of, like, you know, tell them beforehand that when I get up in the morning, I do yoga. I go and meditate. I go for a walk and just become one, so to speak. I have a green juice, and then afterwards I, you know, neck a couple of coffees, and so to speak. Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like, well, I felt an obligation to tell them that, because it's almost like when you mention it to some people, they look at you like you've come from a different planet, so to speak. It's still, and albeit so much research suggests, so much research out there that meditation, mindfulness, and these things are useful, there still is that thing. There still is a sort of, you know, top sports people use meditation, yoga, Reiki, top business people, but there's still like that sort of society, that sort of stigma around it. One thing that I'm wary of too is that if anyone sort of claims a privileged view on health or behavior, and I just sort of out the door, I don't want to know. Once they sort of start saying that, be it empirically, be it anecdotally, once they sort of start claiming that their way is the only way and their way, then I switch off completely, because I really believe in all things. And for me, I think collaboration is key. But we are seeing more and more people open-minded, and certainly in the courses I teach, I'm seeing more people coming to learn from the scientific background, the physiotherapy, the chiropractor, the medical people, want to know a little bit more, because I think for me, it's about being truly holistic. When I say holistic, say if someone has anxiety and they go see a medical person, there's a very good chance they're going to deal with it biologically and give a biological treatment. If someone goes to see a psychologist, they're going to sort of look at the appraisal of the situation. They're going to do it probably psychologically. If someone goes to see a sociologist, they're going to sort of look at the environment they're in. And I suppose, you know, who's right or wrong? Well, depending on what your profession is. But equally, I think for me, all these things are multifactorial. Now, I'm not a medical person, so I can't comment on that. But if someone comes to me for anxiety, depression, I always say, you know, you might want to see your GP first and see what their take is on the situation, because it could be underlinked by something else that could be treated. You know, someone comes to see me for pain, I go see a medical person first, because pain is a sign that something's not right. And I'm not saying I can't work with them, but equally, I'm saying that we cover every base. So I'm a big believer in being truly holistic and not reductionist to the point where, okay, because these things there's many variables, you know, and I think for me, it's the expectation of the person to what they're looking to get out of the session as well. That's the big thing too. I think it's the important thing, you know, what they're looking to get out of the session. And for yourself, how long do the sessions last that you normally do, Marcus? So someone comes in to see you. What's the normal time frame that a session will go on for?
So just depending where they are, if they've got more deeper issues going on, and they're kind of really stuck, then the initial few sessions might be up to an hour and a half. If they're just coming for like a one-off treatment, like a Reiki treatment, it's usually around 50 minutes. Because I believe, like, you know, the kind of norm for kind of like, you know, therapy or psychotherapy or kind of even hypnotherapy, you know, there's kind of a thing out there that you only do like an hour. And for that come to me, you know, you could talk for like 20 minutes just before even like relaxed and ready to even trust you to be able to do some work. So I found that working with clients, they need a little bit of time just to kind of, you know, to build that rapport with you before we actually, you know, go in and actually do some work. So yeah, and sometimes I've even done 1 hour and 45 minutes with people who have, you know, been in some, you know, struggling situations. So I kind of just go with what I feel, with what they need, but I won't keep anybody longer than, you know, 2 hours in a session.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make there, because I think that's the sort of thing in terms of it's not easy. Time is of the essence, and on the other side of things, there's probably going to be people watching this program that are starting their journey in EFT, Reiki, in holistic coaching, whatever, and they're wondering where to sort of place themselves. And I think for me, one of the challenges, at least, is going to be how to. I think the challenge is, you know, people like yourself, you do what you do because you love doing it, and I think that the challenge is to sort of, you know, everyone's got to eat. We've all got to make a living, and so on and so forth. And I had this conversation recently with someone who does energy healing, and people sort of saying, well, should the energy healer charge? And well, the energy healer's got to eat too, you know. And in the end, that's the big thing for me. And every profession, you know, no one really moans if they've got to pay a solicitor, and obviously people get paid, and a physio gets paid, you know, the doctor gets paid, and different professions gets paid, the butcher back gets paid. And I know that people put a lot of hours into their training, but so do you guys. You guys, you know, put a lot in and invest a lot of energy, put a lot in, really. And I think for me, it's one thing being a good practitioner, being good at what you do, because you can be the best in the world at what you do, great at what you do, but there's one thing turning it into like a business. And I think, was that a challenge you had, turning it into business, Marcus? I wouldn't say turning it into business, but making it so you could, like, you know,
definitely. And you know, in the early days, and you know, learning NLP and starting practicing it, I was kind of doing it because I enjoyed doing it and wanted to kind of explore, you know, what could I do with these techniques? You know, how could I help people? And I was doing that for quite a few years alongside, you know, other jobs. And it's only been in the last kind of like, you know, 2 years that I've decided that, you know, I do want to make it into a business where it is profitable and I can, you know, live from it as well as love doing it. And it is difficult because, like you said, it's an important point. You can be really good at what you do, but if you've not got those business skills and marketable skills, then you're not going to get the business to be able to live off. So, you know, even now, I'm going through that process as well, you know, learning that knowledge to be able to, you know, to fully do that and have an established, you know, coaching practice that I can, you know, live off and, you know, do what I love. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's sort of a challenge, really, because when you do what you love doing, and I think that's a big test, I think for me, what you mentioned there, sort of, if you really love what you do, you'll sort of carry on doing it. And look at other ways to sustain and supplement the income and to build it into a full-time profession. Because the reality is that the challenge is, I think, that, you know, the energy required to do a supplementary job, and you know, like you mentioned earlier, you did some work in security of the doors, and you know, if you work a long shift in an environment that can be challenging mentally, and then all of a sudden you've got to sort of, you know, you're getting up in the morning and going again. it's not easy. But I think for me, the people who last in this industry, the ones who love what they do and sort of gradually build it along, because people sort of these days, I think they want the quick fix. They want to be here, there, now. They want the sort of, you know, the full client base in the space of, you know, a few months. They want it here and now. And I think for me, it's a journey. It's one of them really where, you know, you kind of stick in there and go from there and do the best you can with what you've got. That's all any of us can do. Definitely, and it helps a lot. I think it helps a lot. You know, people like yourself who do the work on themselves. I think that's a really, really big thing. For me, like yourself, Marcus, I do the work on myself. I do self-hypnosis. I see other people in the field, and I've had some great mentors on my journey. You never stop learning. To this day, people say, why are you still learning? Why do you still enroll in these sort of learning programs? Because you never the finished article, is the way I see it. And I think that, you know, we're always learning, definitely. And do you find that with yourself, that you're always learning new things and new ways and new ideas? Or
yeah, all the time. You know, I can't remember, some philosopher said, you know, as long as you're alive and you're still breathing, then, you know, there's still stuff you don't know. There's still other opportunities out there. So, like, I mean, I'm going on a workshop this weekend as well. So, yeah, I'm always looking to learn, to understand, you know, the human mind and the way we work, and, you know, how I can help people, and not just for other people, or for myself as well. Because, you know, I love from having those kind of earlier shifts, you know, early 20s, mid 20s, and even early 30s, to help me move forward in the direction I've gone. It shows me what is possible. So it's like, you know, it's like, how can I put it? It's like somehow this kind of life, this personal development, moving forward, studying things, it just kind of takes over on itself. So I know that, you know, this is kind of just who I am, and the direction of my life is going to continue to flow. And, you know, I love learning new things, and, you know, meeting new people, and, you know, challenging myself as well. I think when we challenge ourselves, that's when we grow just out of that comfort box. That's when we grow more.
That's really interesting stuff. And I mean, the thing is too, I suppose, on the other side of things, people will sort of be watching this thinking, okay, you know, you've made a transformation in one sense. And I think it'd be great, if you're not already doing it, to have people like yourself to go into schools and talk to young people who've sort of got themselves in a situation where they're starting to break out. And okay, they may not take it on board, all of them, but I'm sure that one person, it's like it takes one drop to rise the entire ocean, where we know the knock-on effects that can happen. And is it something you consider doing, Marcus, going to schools and talking to young people who sort of got themselves stuck in a situation where they can't break out, and just to see someone who has been there, done it themselves? You know, you've walked in the doors, you sort of, you're in that situation yourself, you've got out of the situation, you're educated, you're living it. And is it something that you do or consider doing yourself? Or
yeah, it's definitely something I would consider doing, and I have thought about it, you know, on my journey, and I think that, you know, there'll become a time where there's going to be more opportunity, you know, open for me like that, because I think it does go back when you look at the next generation that are coming up. The younger they are, the more opportunity we've got as people who've gone through different experiences. We can help them, one, not have to go through it, and two, if they are going through it, we can help change them a lot earlier, or help them find a better path. So yeah, I'm definitely open to, you know, going in schools, speaking to people, and like you say, if one person, if it reaches one person and they make a different decision, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely, and you know, definitely, and just sort of, I think some of the biggest things you mentioned earlier about the work you do with people who are anxious and anxiety, and anxiety could be linked to, it's multifactorial. There's many things, obviously, with anxiety, and certainly I'm not, you know, suggesting that, you know, people. It's just from an educational point of view, your take on some of the things you do with people who've got anxiety and stress and so on and so forth. Do you, when someone comes to see you for anxiety, I think if nothing else, even to lie down and just decompress is a big thing, and listen to that music is quite useful anyway. But is there anything specific that you sort of do that you found quite useful for people who've got anxiety?
Yeah, well, I'll usually use EFT with them initially
Yeah.
around whatever they think the kind of surface level of the anxiety is, and it's usually manifested, you know, because of this person or that person or a certain situation. That's not usually the root of it, but it's how it's kind of manifesting. So I'll do some EFT around that with them to just to calm them down, to calm the mind down, and then look at kind of other memories or places in the past where it might have kind of be a root, you know, a rooted issue. It's usually connected to a few different things. It can even be like, you know, behavioral patterns that they had that they learned from parents or family members, or from certain experiences that they've had that have caused some kind of a bit of trauma in a certain area. So from that, as they've grown up in their life, they've created or the unconscious mind is creating certain beliefs around that trauma, which then manifests in certain behavioral patterns to keep them safe. So I kind of look at different levels, but usually I'll use EFT first, help to calm them down and teach them how to do it. So then in the moment, they can actually practice EFT at home just to relieve those anxious feelings. And that's helping them change the state so they can go and do, you know, whatever it is they wanted to do. And then I will use NLP as an anchoring technique. So I'll get them to anchor calmness, confidence, and kind of a nice calm feeling. So then at the times where they would have felt anxious, they can anchor that and fire that off. So it just changes the neurology in the brain and what they associate anxiety to. So they're the kind of initial things I use. And one of the things when people come in that they've had anxiety or depression, they've had these kind of patterns for so long, like you say, some people do come and they want it gone in like, you know, one session or two sessions. And that's the struggle that I've had with people, because like even in my own life going on this journey, you know, I've been at it over 10 years. And I don't have anxiety or panic attacks and stuff like I did, you know, 10, 15 years ago. But there has been a lot of work, you know, to get to that point where in kind of, let's say automatically, that's kind of been weeded out of my unconscious through that work. And trying to get that message across to people that they don't have to come along with me for 10 years, but it does take, you know, it does take a few sessions and some stuff they need to learn to be able to change those kind of deeper patterns.
That's a really good point you made there. And I think that, you know, people understanding that anxiety is a normal reaction. It's a biological reaction. Generally speaking, it could be an appraisal of the situation. So the way we appraise a situation, it could be that you hear this redundancies being made at work, and you're sort of thinking you could be made redundant. How are you going to pay the bills? It could be you've got a presentation. It could be that you've sort of been in a situation where you know, maybe a car accident. So different things can spark things off. So you could be in an office one day and an air conditioner can go off and remind you of sort of fighting in a war, so to speak, and that can implicitly spark a subconscious reaction off. So I think where that's concerned, it's important that, and you know, the anxiety, it's a normal biological reaction. So obviously the appraisal has a lot to do with it, but also the other biological things that could be a factor too. And if it's a biological thing, then I always say, well, it's best to see someone in the medical field, not being a medical person myself, but I can certainly have the appraisal. But I sort of see from your hymn sheet there, and before I do any cognitive work with my clients on anxiety, after I've sort of said, well, first go and see a medical person, look at the, you know, the biological things it could be, or even nutritional things it could be nutritional imbalances, and so on and so forth. I look at the breathing. It's a big thing for me. I get them to start breathing properly again, because anxiety people tend to breathe high and fast and hyperventilate. I just get them to breathe deeper a bit, and by breathing deeper, you can start changing the biochemistry to settle the sympathetic response, so to speak. And I think for me, once you sort of breathe deeper and you can sort of calm the nervous system down, and then from there you can start working on the appraisal. I think things like you mentioned there are great, like the EFT and the Reiki, become a lot more self-aware. And certainly I've had times when I've been going into big meetings and my appraisal situation has been a bit apprehensive. I'll sort of sit in the car before I go in and sort of tap away and just breathe away and just, you know, recompose myself and go forward. And I think for me, even sort of telling people it's normal, you know, it's normal to feel that way. It's just don't feel that way longer than you need to. Because if I sort of walk down the street and I see a dog chasing me, yeah, it's normal reaction for the heart rate to go up and for the nervous system sympathetic to kick in. But equally in saying that, if it's happening regularly, for one reason or the other, and it could be deep in the unconscious, could be something not really aware of on the radar, then obviously, it's something that we probably want to work on, because it's not a nice place to be and to experience. But, there's sort of a couple of things for people to think about, a lot more obviously from there. But it's really interesting you say that. And I think for me, one of the things that is quite useful is having a number of different ways to sort of help people along the way, because some people who are and have experienced trauma may not be comfortable sort of laying down and meditating, because there's nowhere to run. Fight, flight, freeze. It's like, even sitting still with their own thoughts, if they've got trauma and parts of the brain aren't working as well as they should be working, and they're sort of trying to sit there and process that, then it can be quite difficult. So maybe doing a more experiential thing for them, help them go along. But like you said, it's all relative, and I think it all depends on the situation. There's no two people the same. It's hard to put a time frame on sessions because no one really quite knows. And from hypnotherapy, one thing I've learned over many years is people's expectations, the stigma around things. And I had one person say to me a year ago, Marcus, they sent me an email saying that if I could help them with anxiety, they had anxiety while they were driving. And I said, well, I have to speak to you in more detail, first of all, to get a better idea of what the situation is. And then I can give you an idea of what we can do from the point of view of interventions, of planning and going forward. After we've seen someone before, he'd made some certain inquiries, and he emailed me back saying, well, I've spoken to someone at a practice somewhere in London, and they said to him that they could do a technique with him that would erase it all. What were my thoughts on that? And I said, well, as far as I'm aware, you can't erase. What do? Do you get like a felt tip and erase? So I said, that's not something I've mastered. It might be possible, but through all the years I've been studying what I have, I've not come across a technique where you can erase, parts of the brain. But if they've said they can do that, and you believe they can do it, then who am I? Be my guest, And that's the trouble you've got. I think there's a stigma around these things, and you can do a lot. Obviously, I'm not implying you can't do a lot in a small time, but I think it's like all things. Superman doesn't have to jump the building in one bound. It can be incrementally, extend the comfort zone. I think sometimes that's the trouble out there, and I think I suppose where it is, I suppose in the UK and other countries too, for that matter, there's loose regulations, and that can be, I suppose, useful things at one point of view, because people get a chance to sort of get out there and do what they do. But on the other side of things, you get all sorts of ridiculous claims, and the stigma then makes it hard for everybody else, because people come up with some ridiculous claims, and then people start to think that somehow you could sort of get inside the brain. There's like 86.4 billion neurons, trillions of cells in the brain. I think that it's a little bit more complex than that. But that's another story for another day. What I want to do, I'm mindful of time. I know you've got things to do, and I'm very grateful for coming on board. Marcus, have you got anything coming up? Any workshops? Any things that you want to mention you got coming up? Can people contact you as well, by the way?
Absolutely. The website marcusabraham.com. They can contact me there, and any new workshops or programs that I'll be running, they'll be put up there very soon. So people can find it all there. And there's a Facebook page, Marcus Abraham Life Coaching, the Facebook page, and the Instagram as well.
Fantastic. No, definitely. I really big fan of your work, and I think that one of the great things about your work is that you've been there, you've done that, wore a t-shirt, and I think that experiences count for a lot in life. I mean, you can do so much learning in the training room, but discovery is true learning. I really think that going out there and sort of that guided discovery, our experiences, and then sharing our experiences with other people to take what they want out of it and guide them to go forward. So I want to really thank you for coming on board the show today, and I'm sure we'll have you on board the show again, Marcus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.